Everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Gamer Dad channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. So, one of my audience members, Frank, asked me to take a look at this particular article that's titled Ubisoft developers are leaving the company in droves. In fact, he actually mentioned that I look at the article itself, particularly written by Polygon. So Ubisoft developers, this is the one you asked me to look at, Frank, and it says Ubisoft facing developer exodus according to new report. Now, this was December 20th / December 21st when these two articles were published. This was just, basically a few weeks ago. And it is a thing. In the Division community, we've seen community developers move to other studios. We've also seen specifically one Division developer that we kind of, followed on Twitter that designed a lot of the really cool systems within the game also leave and go to a studio. I think the studio that's making Hitman, or the studio that made Hitman, and is actually being, in a sense, expectant, or its community is expecting a 007 game of some kind from that studio. I think it's IO. Is it IO? Somebody help me in the comment section with that. Now, I think this is quite interesting. I'll go ahead and kind of start out this with a little context from what I've heard in the past. Now, because I try to follow very small, number of games, I don't follow too much. I have nonetheless heard a developer of a video game that's being anticipated this year, Gotham Knights. He's a senior designer, and he's at Ubisoft. No, he's at Warner Brothers Montreal. This developer said something in an interview a few years ago. It was a podcast. He said, in the gaming industry, what's very surprising is a lot of developers leave all the time. In fact, they move so fast that 1 minute, this is basically he said something along the lines of these. It's kind of his words. He said something along the lines of, you could say hi to somebody in the morning and by afternoon, they already have another job somewhere else. That's crazy. I mean, it's insane. And this is something he said years ago. In fact, it was on a podcast called the Humans of Gaming podcast. The name of the podcast has changed, but if you Google it and Googled up Warner Brothers Montreal, you'll find the name. If I can link it for you guys, I'll do so. Now, that kind of gave me a sense then that, okay, development in a sense, a lot of companies are looking for talented, people all the time, especially now with everything that's gone on. I think for sure that there must have been some sort of a change within the industry where a lot of people are moving, or at least quitting their jobs temporarily after having to deal with heavy workloads, and are taking time off to just decompress, in some cases spend time with their families. Now, I remember when this particular developer working on a Division actually moved studios, I said something along the lines of, I felt that it was more for family reasons, familiar reasons, in a sense. A lot of times when people are much younger, they can spend a lot of their time and energy working, being ambitious and getting excited about things. But as they start getting older, maybe in some cases having kids, this developer, actually in our community, they just had a new kid that was about 1 in age at that time. And I could see from posts about, family and the whole COVID-19, not being able to visit, all of that stuff. I could see how that can affect, a young dad. In fact, myself, I remember having my 1-year-old, and at that time, it was a first child. I made some crazy decisions, and a lot of things were actually based on me just trying to ensure that I took care of my kid. So I can understand people in those positions as well, kind of, different things. I'm just saying, in general, there are different things that, that are happening. So I read this article, actually, I did, and there are some really important talents that have been leaving, and some of them have been leaving to other studios. I mean, it's insane. Check this out. So it says Axios interviewed 12 current and former Ubisoft developers about their resignations, noting that 5 top 25 credited developers on Far Cry 6 have left. Noting that 5 have left the studio. 12 people out of the top 50 credited developers from Assassin's Creed Valhalla left too. Now, Assassin's Creed Valhalla was done by 12 studios. So, I mean, I guess that's a lot of developers. So 12 leaving, that's still a huge number. But it's not just big name leads and developers. Axios and Ubisoft Axios said Ubisoft Canadian studios have seen losses. Two developers said the resignations have stalled or slowed projects at the studio. Now, this is quite interesting because this conversation has been going on as to why games are getting delayed and all of these things. And it appears that this is probably one of the reasons. Now, I've seen other people respond to this. Actually, I confess, I watched one YouTube video, and this person was saying, well, it's because they have to make all these crappy games, and making the same games. Assassin's Creed Valhalla was just too big, and all these other games of this and that and this. And I'm like, well, I mean, it's the company mandate, and I'm sure when they got the jobs, they were excited. They were gonna work with a big name publisher, but maybe the heat of the job and all the expectations have kind of just changed and all of that. And I think they probably took that direction. Now, let me give you my thoughts. Here's what I think is going on in the industry. And I may be 100% wrong. In fact, I don't want to be, but I hope I am. What's going on in the industry right now is we've just entered a new console generation where there will feel like a lack of new generation games for a while. Okay? Now, what that means is the two console manufacturers are going to be at each other's heels when it comes to competition. And if both of these studios, or both of these names, Sony and Xbox, which I say studios, but they have studios under them, I misspoke there, they are looking for games. Who's going to make a game for us? They are willing, it seems, or positioned, positioned, to acquire whoever is going to be able to deliver a video game in whatever genre that they can deliver that game. And if it's an exclusive, even better. And if it's not an exclusive, for them, it's also still good because they will still be in a position to earn the revenue from all consoles and PC. It doesn't matter at this point. What I think is happening right now is there is money, or there are funds being pumped into even other individual development studios, or those individual development studios are able to secure more funding from even investors to be able to pay, in a sense, competitively against developers that are in these big name publishers and studios. So Ubisoft, seeing its employees leave, especially for better pay, because this Polygon article actually cited, I think it was this article that probably cited it. I can't necessarily pinpoint because I've read in different places, right? Some of the reasons that they have left, that they've, pretty much moved, is because of better, propositions. In fact, if this article doesn't even cite it, screw it. The developer that left from the division to the other studio basically maintained a few things about why they enjoyed their new, or why they moved to their new position. They just basically said, well, this is fun because of these things. You go to these studios and look at their job postings, and you're going to see that many of them are encouraging things like, oh, you're going to be able to work remotely. You're going to be able to have these, hours to yourself. You're going to be able to get off work at 5. You're not going to need to crunch. All of these new expectations being set, they do require funding to be able to have your staff actually have a regular life and not have them crunch forever. I think this is probably what's going on. So on the space, everyone is trying to get a game out there because now everyone wants to absorb your game in terms of Microsoft and Sony. So money is being secured to get these projects done. So here's what Ubisoft needs to pay attention to. Now, this is not a mass exodus, as they must have put it. I mean, I guess Polygon, I don't know. Here, okay, it's not a mass, it's just an exodus. Now, they say exodus, but, that's a word that kind of, an exodus, if you kind of go in a historical sense of exodus, it was literally a whole nation leaving. So this is kind of, huge. This is a big word. I'm not saying it's an exodus, but I'm saying it's more of a trickling in a sense. And very soon, the trickling, like these articles are already admitting, saying that they're already slowing down projects, is eventually going to start to look very differently. Now, I think, Ubisoft has mitigating factors against this, by the way, and many people may not see it. I don't want to say anything here because sometimes it's just good to just shut my mouth in some aspects, but I think they have mitigating factors in place. And I don't want to mention what I think those are. I'm not saying that, that they are what they are. But I'm just saying that if those mitigating factors are in place, they're going to continue business as usual. And they're not necessarily going to feel the heat. They are an independent publisher in a sense. But they stand to gain if their games are published. And it doesn't seem like right now they have a lot of the people who are leaving that are able to affect future projects. So if the Far Cry 6 and Assassin's Creed Valhalla team people already left, these are already published games. If there's another project already building from the ground up, those games already have dedicated leadership, dedicated creative directors. If, say, somebody like Julian Garrity said, I'm going to EA. Oh, now Star Wars fans, be worried, be concerned. Okay, so it's not necessarily at that level yet. And I think there's a reason that it's not at that level. I think over the years of the vetting for somebody to reach that leadership position, the company understands and knows that that person's priorities are with them. In case of developers, I think Ubisoft feels like they might be in a position to be able to at least have some developers leave, which happens in every studio, like I put as a caveat in the beginning of this video, to ensure that there are people who might be able to come into the pipeline. And so these are just some of my thoughts nonetheless. Man, we could sit here for hours and hours talking about different kinds of possibilities, but I'll get out of your hair. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you guys. Peace out.